Bring this in, Peter, and invite. I don't want to start video, but I do want to mute. Got it. Okay. Found it. Okay, you guys. Cannot minimize Zoom when you're recording this meeting. Okay, that's fine. All right, you guys. Well, welcome. Today we're going to talk about checklists that you can really share with your families. I think it would be like the primary way that people are using checklists. It's potential that you would use checklists for volunteers, your staff, maybe employee applicants. It kind of will depend on, certainly for like employee related things, kind of HR rules that apply to your state. But generally, and what I'm going to really speak about today is connecting your families so that they can support you with the documents that need to be shared during the home study process and the process of adoption or licensing in general for your families. So why would you use a checklist? Because it organizes, solidifies your process. So it really puts into play, like a lot of times you know how to do the order of things, but it kind of makes sure that you've got a firm electronic record of these are the major captures. Once you've got that established of the base, then you can certainly add on. So there are definitely agencies that have very minute details, multiple follow-ups, things like that can be established as your team really gets comfortable and you build a culture around using the database together. It can set due dates and the responsible worker, which if you log in on the home screen, you can be notified. That is, in my opinion, can be helpful and hurtful, because if it looks like you're not getting anything done, that can really be a distraction when you first log into your site. However, if you're keeping up on top of things and you're using the checklist well, it also can really knock things out like, yes, I did that, and data entry can be really rapid. So it's definitely tracking when you got things done. The reason that we're talking about the online checklist is so that your families can support you again, right? So not having your team collect documents through email and then upload those documents into SAM. These online checklists can allow families to access the documents that you need. So either you're providing them with templates or, for example, a contract or policy guidelines that they can download and then upload directly to you. So notes about checklists. Each checklist is a date field in SAM. Generally, these checklists, these fields are going to be either on the case, or again, because we're talking about the home study, it'll be on the home study. If the home study table is what I'm talking about. If you are building items around the background checks, I think that the background checks should be on that specific table, unless you're wanting to limit the types of the tracking and keep it rather simple, right? So just applicant 1 and applicant 2 are done with background checks. That is totally applicable. The system may not be able to give you as robust notifications and for very specific background checks that have expired, but it can say, hey, for this home study, we've got everything that we need. So there's different ways of looking at it, and you'll need to consider what's going to be best for your organization. Each checklist item can be linked to documents. Due dates can be defined, responsible workers can be set, and then you can also add criteria. So it is possible to say, this checklist item is only valid for families in this state, or in this program, or this country, right? So depending on how you've organized your system, case type is generally set for domestic or international or foster care, kind of depending on what your programs are. And that is a criteria, but you might also say, well, they must be international, but they are working in this specific country program. You can add one or more criteria to each checklist item or checklist sections. So there are 2 views to checklists. There's an internal view, which is what your team will use to look at the checklist. And there's an external view, which is what your families will use. Internal users, or SAM users, when you log into SAM, you can view all your checklist items by the client by accessing their site. You could also look at this through a report. So I think that's somewhat underutilized, and maybe we don't talk about it a lot. But you can look at checklist items through a report as well to see what are all the to-do items for your entire caseload for the upcoming month or 2 months, so you can kind of plan your schedule out. On the internal side, you can control what families can view. So it's, we've seen different situations arise over the years where families may overwrite information that they really shouldn't. And you can prevent that by saying, hey, all of this stuff is done and they don't need to see that. Not only does that prevent any kind of overwriting, it also helps simplify what needs to be shown and displayed for that family at that point in time. As far as for what families see, they should be able to see their cases and the records that you're allowing them to see. So let's look at SAM a little bit more than that really gorgeous slide. So inside of SAM, when you're on a client record, you will see the case checklist on the sidebar. That link is not really something that can be managed by your team at this time, so it should be available for everybody, and it's fairly close to the top. Once checklist sections have been opened for that client, you will see them kind of in this look here. And so this is what SAM's internal view looks like. Let me go ahead and
Hey, Stephanie, we're not seeing anything. We're just seeing you.
Oh, you're seeing me?
Just you!
Worst. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, you would have seen that pretty slide, but you're not seeing that pretty slide. And I appreciate whoever it is telling me about that. So then I've just been talking to you and you've been looking at me looking at the pretty slides. So sorry. Okay. Let's start over. I won't start from the top, but okay. Here, right? So internal, external, this is the really pretty slide, whether you think so or not. But this here is what I was showing you. So internally, your clients, your team rather, will see this case checklist link at the top, this sidebar link. Okay, and again, it is not manageable right now by your team, so it really should be on your site. If it's not, you should let me know, or our support team know through the support link, but it should be there. Then internally, your system is going to show like this. So the items that are displayed are going to vary depending on how you set them up, but they're divided into sections. So this block right here is a section. These each are checklist items. So these are the dates that are showing here. These are the dates that they are completed is what's being entered. The due date displays next to it. There's a response time calculated between those two. Negative days are going to mean your team got that done ahead of schedule. The responsible worker, you can click edit and set that person here. You could also have it established in the configurations for a specific person. If you have one case coordinator, that person can be set. If you have multiple case coordinators, depending on program, that might be set automatically and assigned on the checklist item by the role. Okay. You can also add memos that'll help you kind of remember things about this specific checklist item on this specific client. This is a document link. So if there is a document associated with this, you will see when it's not been uploaded versus when it has, okay, when it turns color. This is new to the release that everybody should get by the end of next week. A few agencies have this. If there is a public form linked to the checklist, this little icon here will be there. And you can click that to open the internal view of that public form so that your users can see, oh, that's the application and it's filled out in a form, and click and open and view that application. Okay. You could have public forms linked to checklists for many things. I can imagine it for a financial form, on the application form, guardians, references. As you navigate beyond the home study process, you could have it set up for post-adoption reports, which a couple of agencies are really pushing forward on that right now, and which is really neat to see how that links. So instead, again, of a PDF form being downloaded and then re-uploaded to the system, your families could actually enter the data directly into SAM. So then that data is usable as demographic data for you to run your program and make decisions. Another thing that is helpful that I've mentioned, but you may or may not have noticed, is this little eyeball icon. This is showing a section that is no longer displayed to the client. Oops, excuse me. And this one, I wanted to scroll down. This one right here is shown to the client still, because maybe we haven't received everything for the background checks. If I click in here, just so we can see this here, the case checklist is here and their checklist items are here. Other things you can do, not sure if you know, you can hide sections. So even internally, your team can really focus in on what's outstanding in these checklists. Like once the inquiry phase has been done, we really don't need to look at it any longer if they're already moved on. And again, same for the home study. If the home study section is complete, especially because there may be lots of sections for the home study, you can hide those as they're done. You can always reopen them by clicking on that link, okay? And just because we're here, something I don't often do, because I don't know that I've seen it as utilized and not really heard it being done through support, but you can add items. So if you needed to remember something 2 months from now for this client record, you could add that if you like, okay? As opposed to your user's view, your families access the checklist through a public form. So only your administrators will be able to get the links for this, but the public form links are under settings, under the system settings box, and kind of their alphabetical order. So there's a little more than 3/4 of the way down. When your family logs in, they will need to use their email address and a login that they created. If they haven't created a login, they can do so through SAM's prompts. Okay. When they log in, they'll be taken to a form similar to this, where I think that you should show them their case, because it's all fine when they're your first client, but should they come back and want to apply a secondary time a couple years later, you'll need to go ahead and have that case navigation in play for them to toggle between. And then the application, and then each of the sections that correlate to these here, right, in your internal, that are shown to the client will then be displayed. So once they're open on your side internally, they will also be open on the client side. And let's go in and look at that. So I'm already logged in. Pop this down here. So this is in our master site. And if any of these configurations really appeal to you, like you like the messaging or the back navigation or anything like that, let me know, because we can export it and put it into your sites. I've got basic information about the case. Oops, let me make this a little, make this larger. There we go, a little bit larger here. Each section, even though internally we don't have any messaging, you can display messaging to the client. Okay, so it can be elaborate. I've seen really neat things with icons being used that link off to additional details. You can just have all your messaging here. It's up to you and what you think culturally works for the families you work with. And then the number of sections, right? What's shown to the family is the date complete. They're generally not going to have due dates. But you might try and push due dates. And I think if one of these items has a due date, the due date would display. You can allow or provide documents for the family to download. So the family can click that field or that document download. Now they've got it on their screen. They can sign, read it, sign it, and then save it locally. So they've got a local copy on their system, and then come back and upload it to you. Once it's uploaded, the icon changes. Let's see if I have another one. So it looks like this when it's not uploaded. When it is uploaded, it changes, right? And the date is entered. If you are linking them instead of to a specific document, but to a form, Sam will show this, and you can click, and the family will actually be able to open that public form then. And let's let it load. And so these are public forms that you might be familiar with. Generally, agencies start with an application form, and that once Sam wants to open, let me have everything cached before I get in here.
Where are you? I talked to Tony all the time. Can I come in?
Let's see.
No.
Okay. All right. So then they can link into public forms as well, right? This is where I'm saying if this is, once this is entered on internally for you, you will now see this public form link here. If I jump back over here, I should, my site app might not actually be updated yet either. Can't remember if it is. It's not yet. So, but eventually it will have this link and you can click to your team's internal view of that. Okay. Oops, let's go back here. So one of the things that I do want to talk about, because I think it's important, I've got a couple soapboxes here, is that your process is important. So these forms are great, but if you don't really know the order of things, it's not going to be that great. So I kind of talk about this on a regular basis, but I just want to kind of brief through it, is creating a general workflow for your family is super effective. I think David from All God's Children is online. He created one of these just for the post-adoption report process when we put that into play for that agency. Just for this. So this can become very, very minute. And I really like to start, this is the general. If you guys want this, I can absolutely share something like this just to like relay to all of your team members. In my experience, this is the general overview, but each of these items then are going to have very specific milestones, and we start to get really more detailed. There's also this potential where there's a decision at each of these items sent, right? So you may send an inquiry and then they may never follow up with you. And so then do you move them to application? Probably not. You're going to move them straight to case closure, right? And so making those kind of arrows known so that's convenient for your team to understand what's going on. But the dates here that are important, these are generally going to be what's on your checklist. And so kind of writing them out and kind of ordering them, in my opinion, outside of SAM, get it onto a Google Doc or something else that's a way that your team can utilize it is really helpful. I've talked before about Post-it notes, just because it kind of, they trick your brain to allowing some flexibility and some movement in the order of things, especially when you're setting up for the first time. Okay. Checklist sections can help better organize all the milestones. So another thing that we've talked about from a TED Talks that we learned is that our brains kind of can only handle 5 to 10, 5 to 13 items that kind of make up a process. Once we go beyond that, it's too much, and like the body a little bit wants to like freeze, right? And not deal with that. So having different checklist sections will help break it up. I've kind of, because the home study process is generally like a 3-month process in and of itself, it lends itself very well to being broken up. So I like to think of it in like intro packet and contacts and like maybe the basic application if that were part of it, identification and background checks, separating that portion out so that again, you can hide the part 1 because we know that's done. I like labeling things step 1, step 2, step 3, so that for your team and for the family, it makes sense. It's things that are familiar and we know where we're at in that process. But kind of breaking it up into different sections, I think, is super helpful. Each section then can have separate criteria as well. So again, it's kind of, if it relates to a specific state or a specific program, those sections, a couple of documents that vary can be how do I want to say this? They can have a criteria so that they only apply when, right? So there's if-then scenarios. So my last thing on my soapbox is really, I think agencies get hung up when they think of all the exceptions to the rule. So really start building for the 80%. Do not plan for the exceptions at the onset, because it's kind of that overwhelm thing, is like, if you're a home study provider working with many different countries, you've got all kinds of rules to deal with. Go with what is most common. Something I've seen set up is kind of a matrix of sort. These are using Excel. These are all the documents that we need for the 80%. And then in each column, putting all of the additional countries or states that you work in, and not either appending documents to the end of the 80% that are required for that, or shading out the documents that are not required for that particular state or country, right? And so that's going to be different. But again, I don't want you to get hung up on all the exceptions, because there could be many, many things. When you're adding a checklist item, there are lots of options, but there's really only 2 that you have to set up. Is what is the date field you're trying to get entered? And what section do you want to put it on? Okay, so it can be actually very simple, and all the additional prompts that are shown in the configuration are just empty. They're literally just not entered, which is fine. Now, let me jump over here and show you the configuration settings, because I think you'll understand, certainly if you've not seen it before, why it can feel overwhelming. I think it's only, what did I say? It is 7 items, so it's within what our brains can manage, but all of these things are kind of, it's just all right there, and it's wordy. It is wordy for sure. I will not deceive you with that. We're working on that with a updated version, but there's a lot going on anyways, because there are so many options that you can do. Goodness. Okay, come over here. Click on any of these. Okay, so as you're adding or editing a checklist item, you're always going to be presented with all of the available options to you. So choosing which section, you have the choice to either select something that exists or enter something new. Okay, and so this is a mandatory setting. The other choice for you that is required, and they're both right at the top, is selecting the field, which again is that date field that you want to enter the date. And I love checklists because it says not only, yes, I did it, right, like a check mark would do, but the date that you did it. So it's 2 values in one space. You can choose an existing field. Sam is defaults right now to the case table, but you have other options for other types of tables that you might have put that field on. Generally, the things that I have built checklists off of are either off the case. So this is happening only one time while this family is working with us for the domestic adoption program or the foster care program, right? It happens once. Application is we're going to approve that application one time. We're not doing this over and over again. As soon as you get to doing things over and over again, we're talking about potentially the home study or the license process, if that's enabled in your site. Or if you have to do this for every person in home, every new person in home that you've added over age 14, you need their birth certificate, you need their driver's license, you need to get a background check for, you might add that under, I would suggest that you add that under the persons in family home. And then the other thing I think about is background checks, right? And so every background check for every single person in the home that has them required, you have to do several steps. So generally about 4 or 5 steps that have to be taken for those background checks. So in order for you to manage that, it's because it's on the individual generally, having it set up so that you have an individual background check record for each person in the home and each applicant. And then these are the 4 or 5 things that need to be done that are reviewed then. The other one that I can see a lot is, again, post-adoption reports and the adoption record too. I think absolutely you could create a bigger process around referrals and matching. It's all going to be, how do I say this too? It's important for you to think about your team's bandwidth, okay? Data entry for the sake of data entry is not helpful. If your team utilizes that data or it's required, that's helpful. Okay, so in my opinion, and this is, everybody's out for speculation on it, is like less is more. But there is definitely like a requirement that needs to be upkept. Okay, and so that's again where that process comes in, or like what are the main things that we need to capture here. If you can't find a field, that could make sense, right? So we had made a decision a couple years back to kind of pull things out because it was overwhelming to look at them. Too many things. So there's relatively very few, just enough for you to get the flow, the general flow, but then you can create new fields. So when you're creating starting from scratch of the documents required for the home study or the licensing process, probably going to be creating a lot of those fields. Sam is going to create it initially on the case and you just choose a new table. Okay. You set the response time if it relates, right? And so this would be like, I want to approve the application within 7 days after it is received. That makes sense as a response time, right? Things like that. Whether you set the employee or not, right? Again, more is not better, in my opinion. It could just exist on the client record and then you don't have like notifications, but where you want to delegate the responsibilities out to a team, this is going to make a lot of sense. So whether it's based on a specific employee or if it's set by the role, and these roles are established on the client's record. Generally, they're on the case record. They may be on the adoption, right? But generally, they're going to be on the case. If you want to apply a document, so a lot of times in this conversation, we're talking about these home study checklists. This is a lot of documentation that's being collected. You want to include a document. So you can either, again, select something that exists, or if you're building everything from scratch, you're going to create new. And when you create new, Sam will write the field title in for you from what you've labeled it as, which is great. Documents are also added to that document section in the client. So I'm going to show you this to make sure that you understand this. So in this document section, this is the repository where all documents are stored. So you can upload documents from a checklist or another form, and every time they're always going to be compiled in here. And for whatever reason, my system was like uber slow unless I double click it. They'll all be added into this section here, okay? So if you have ad hoc documents, you can add them here, but everything that's uploaded from that client checklist will always be put into here as well. And that is what you're setting when you are choosing the document type, okay? So it seems repetitive, but it's actually because Sam's creating this date field right up here at the top. This is a date field that it's creating. It's then right here giving us a document field to allow the family to upload to. So that's this. And then when we want it to go to the document section, and we do, we're labeling the document type. So there's 3 things happening, and generally they're all going to be the same. If you're building it from scratch, it's very quick to say, create new document. It auto enters that. and then create new doc type, and it will auto enter it from your date title as well. Okay. So these two settings here, the document for upload and this client settings, are going to be hugely important for this. The client settings, you have to choose that it's going to be shown to the client, because there's definitely in your internal view, you can have things that are shown to the clients mixed in with things that are just shown for your team, right? So the application being received, that's shown to the clients, but the application approval date probably is not shown to the clients. And that then will just be shown in your internal view. But where we want to, this is what allows us to say, yes, I want to show that to the client, because it's generally a document that you're allowing them to see. You can provide them a document for download. So these are going to be your PDF templates that you want them to fill out. These are your contracts, your policy agreements, that kind of information. And you will upload the document just like you would any other document field anywhere, right? If you don't want them to download a PDF and fill it out, then you can select a form to use, and this is where you can take them to the application part 1, or a form that might be for guardians, or this I'm going to just talk kind of directly to David, but other people are putting this together. If you have public post-adoption reports, this would link directly to that post-adoption report document, right? So that's possible. You can have both, right? There's always these exceptions where, our family doesn't want to do the data entry there. They want to put it on the PDF for whatever reason, right? That's fine. Open it up to have both. Sam is going to be flexible for you in that way. The other thing here is memos and instructions. So this is what would be displayed to the clients in their visibility of what's going on. Okay, so helping them explain, like, you only need this when, or we're looking for you to scan both IDs together, right, for both applicants, and then upload it into this space. That's information that they need to know, and it sets them up for success. And that's really what you're wanting to do, right? Same thing goes, we don't read things. So, again, it's important for you to go through your public forms and your checklist as the client would, so that you get their experience. If you wouldn't enter it, they probably won't either. So make sure that that's really tested out. If you have criteria, now criteria can vary really wildly as to what kind of settings you have, but you'll always choose the table, the field, and then the value that should apply. You can set criteria on this very specific item. So if this is only, this is the one item in this group, in this checklist section that has a criteria, that's awesome. If you've got kind of more than one, kind of 3, 4, you might separate out those documents into a separate section so that you can manage the section, the criteria for the section, rather than every individual document or checklist item. There is a configuration memo, and these memos are, again, like kind of throughout the system on fields, forms, these checklists, templates, auto actions, etc. They are to be used to help you relay in layman's terms why you've put this into play. And again, it might seem really redundant, but if you're adding the social media agreement 10 years ago, if you had set this up, probably wasn't a thing. But 5 years ago, whenever it came into play of being a contract that needed to be signed and agreed upon, it's nice to know, like, we put this into play at this point in time for this reason, right? For this regulation. Those things are really helpful just to like scan people's memories, especially if there's any kind of turnover with the staff that set things up. So making sure that memos are there is super helpful. Sam will also let you know about the modification. So Right. Okay. So that's saved. So I'm now over time. I've got time for you. I don't know. I didn't even look to see who, there's a bunch of people on. So I'm going to like quick unmute all. I want to make sure because it's a lot. There's a lot going on. I want to make sure that you guys, if you have any questions, your questions are going to be super helpful to everyone else. Does anybody have anything kind of outstanding that you want to ask?
Stephanie, this is David. I do have a question on what the public sees.
Okay.
A lot of ours have multiple cases for various reasons. Do they see only the latest case, or is there a little choose your case thing?
Ooh, to be real honest, the case and what is displayed by initially, it is, I think what Sam does, what the rule, the logic is it's the last entered case. Whether that's their current case or not is up for debate. So because it is a debate, we're thinking about that. I think it would be wise for us to get a call together of some of the major admins to come up with what do we want to be the best practice for the case. But I think the logic right now, and I will clarify, but it is the latest entered case, which would mean like it probably has chronologically the greater case ID. So I will write you guys back and let you know. Case entered date, I'm pretty sure by descending is what it would be. But you can imagine if you're entering historical data into the site, your later entered case may not be the actual current case. It may be historical. There are definitely agencies that have multiple cases open simultaneously. Generally, maybe not for the family, but for other records, it could be possible to have multiple cases. So, so that's why it's a little bit of a debate because everybody does things slightly differently. Would you, David, be interested in joining a call to kind of weigh in on that?
Sure.
Okay, cool. And I don't know if anybody else has noticed that. And I think what you said too, David, is generally people are going to have one case. So again, it's kind of that 80-90% is really going to have one case. It is the families that come and love the culture of your organization, and adopting or fostering kids really fits with their family culture that are going to come back and continue to work with you, right? And they will have that case. So you, multiple cases. So you could have this field shown and they can toggle between. This is also where if a case is done, if you hide from the client's visibility those cases, there won't be anything there for them to see. Those checklist sections rather. Right, this is the configuration right here. Let me go back here in the checklist section. So limiting these, right? So if I click this and I said, no, you can no longer see it. When the family goes to this section and they refresh it, they come back and open it again, they can't see that item. So that is one way that we've implemented in the last couple of months to kind of prevent them from seeing things that no longer apply. And if I were to jump to this home study, I think the only thing they see are the background checks because of the organization of background checks. It's not under the case. It's for the family specifically.
Stephanie?
Uh-huh.
Can you send out the PowerPoint because we missed the first few slides?
Sure. I will actually, well, yes, I will add the PowerPoint and everything to the webinar screen. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sure.
And Stephanie, this is Kimberly Tyson. When we're building out checklists, you implied earlier that there was an ability to say, this checklist is only important for this particular program. Clearly for us, that would be snowflakes. Does the PowerPoint explain how to do that?
That is the criteria. So every checklist item, right? And I'll go, it really is irrelevant for which one, but obviously You will choose the checklist items that it's for, but this criteria is displayed for all of them. You would add, and like probably it's listed as the family's case table, case type equals snowflakes would be my assumption. You would choose the table and choose case once it goes.
But that way nobody else can.
There we go. So, right, so case, and then you would choose case type. You'll pull down until you find, mine's listed under case program. And then Sam will say, what does it equal? And so I don't have snowflakes in here, but you could say it's international or snowflakes, and it'll be whatever options are available to you that your full admins have set up. And you can set things, right? Like it equals, it doesn't equal, is empty or is not empty. Like you can use the operators to support the type of criteria that you want.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The configuration memo that you have underneath that section, the criteria section, is that a memo that only we see internally?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. If you want to show a memo to your clients, when it's shown to the clients, you could instruct them through this memo.
Right, right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Of course, you know, like, I mean, I don't generally show deleting. Deleting is good and bad, but obviously if there's a delete, an X button, you could get that criteria off too, right? Just so that that's super clear. Go back to the, yep, that's fine. It's funny. If you wanted to delete an item, so this is kind of an interesting thing about SAM is like, if a checklist section has been added to a client's record, right now there is a way to refresh it. It's not my favorite way. I would like to have some other ways to go about it. But let's just say in general, it's not going to refresh because you changed the configuration. It's grandfathered in, right? So if you're testing stuff and you continue to build onto your checklist, it's anything new is not going to automatically be added to your client's record. So if you wanted to update their record right here, so I'm now back on the family's record, the family's checklist. If I click advanced options, add section with item, I could do the application section again, and had I made any changes, it would populate new changes up there, new changes that apply to this family, right? So if I've added criteria and they don't apply, it's not going to do anything. In this case, I haven't made any changes, so nothing looks to be different, but that is a way of refreshing that section to gather any new checklist items that have been added to the configuration or adjusted on the configuration. From this area, you can get to the configuration here. Something to be really aware of, okay, is because we've seen it happen. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen, is we've seen people be on the configuration and delete the sections, and then it's gone, right? So that configuration is now gone from your SAM site. So when you are a full admin, you actually have a lot of power, and the changes that you make are dynamic. So they're happening in real time. So a couple things for you. There are tri-sites for every client. So if that's something that you really, instead of making things happen right to production, you want to be, you're a little bit more cautious about your changes, or you want to play with them, let me know. You can just write to support and say, hey, like, heard this is available. How do I go about accessing it? And so you could try. Configurations you make have to be replicated. So there's a trade-off. But then in this site, you know, like if I deleted this section, the configuration for inquiry would be gone. So just being kind of mindful of that. I didn't really talk about adding checklist sections. I kind of mentioned like you can add criteria to individual checklists, and mention you can add criteria to the section. In my screens over here, there is a section. So in the sections, and really I'll just jump here. I don't need to get back to the screens. There's this guide here. This edits the checklist section. There's two ways that checklist sections can be automated into the site. So either during this, under this section configurations, once this opens, you can set on here how it is entered on the client's record. So thinking back to your processes, like I don't really care about application approval until the application is received. So because that application received date precipitates the application approval, that might be the trigger that initiates a whole section around the application being received. It could be that it all comes out with the inquiry. It's going to vary from the way that you determine what your process is. Okay. This section table generally does itself. It should be the main table that this section is based upon. Okay. I think Sam will give you a big error if it's not, but generally it defaults anyways. And then this is where, if this entire section is related to a specific state or a specific program or country, or even I think if a family was entered after such and such a date, right? So if you have new things that happen as of January 2020, or for international agencies, like here's IAMI's new requirements, right? This wasn't, and I don't know, I think actually IAMI like pulled everything, right? Is now up to their rules. But should there be a regulating body that comes in and it's like only records after this point, you could enter in a date, okay, is really what I'm getting at. Is like you're not limited except for, you know, just not knowing if it's possible or not asking if it's possible, because Sam's pretty flexible with criteria and what you can pull. Even you can add a section memo. Now we're talking about, and this is going to be an odd one, these online checklists specifically. So if you wanted to show kind of advanced settings, there's that little, our joke now is like, it's a lav link internally. These tiny little links that will, I promise you they will go away, because they are the bane of my support existence. Is yes, of course it's there, but you can't find it. This little lab link here will open up some client checklist settings. So this is how you could rename this to like, welcome to our program. Oops, excuse me. Right, instead of inquiry section, right? It's just a way for you to portray your voice. You could give them that section a different name. You could add memos and instructions, right? Just basic instructions for them. If though you want to get really like kind of fancy, let me see my checklist. I've gotten fancy, so to speak here, right? It's fairly basic, and I think there's a lot to be said for keeping things simple, but this is actually a template displayed here. And over here in your configuration, you can select a template. So the templates are useful tools in SAM that are used for emails, and they can be used for print, for email, for print, and they can be used for kind of designing your web page, so to speak. It's a little chunky, but once you have because you'll have to have a separate template for each checklist section that you want. But once you've developed one, you probably don't want to go wildly different. And so creating new ones is fairly simple, where you're changing, you create new from existing for a template, change the image, change the message,
Okay, so what do
right? And then you'll
I just
link
need to
it.
know what to tell Andrew. Are we meeting you there?
Does that make sense? Like, there's a lot of stuff going on. So I was looking just this morning at public forms help, and we're always kind of updating it and changing it. If you have questions, I really want to know, because it's important to me that you use the system to its fullest capacity. There's so much going on that it can be certainly overwhelming, but then it can also be very, very underutilized. So the more knowledge you have, the more useful I think that you'll find the system. So I'm very, very willing to help and get you set up. If you have questions also, you can always look at the help, right? So I don't know if this is known to everybody online, but there is a whole online repository. And again, it's updated pretty frequently. It will, excuse me, this is not what it should look like. It should look like this. This is our support. This is what it sort of helpful for being logged in. It actually looks like this. You can do the search to get information. You can also just kind of poke around, like, what are you doing, right? What are you working on? Couple things, just because I have your attention. We are working on a major version upgrade. So the system look will change. That is not expected until like mid next year. And we will be trying to get people into calls and showing you what it's going to look like before. The intent is to make it more mobile friendly. It's better for our back end development team, so things can be developed faster and easier, and also opens up to further integrations. But we're also working on the user experience within that. And so things like those little lav links will not be there. They will be more prevalent with icons and like a little bit more obvious to you. When you see that function, you should know that it exists, and you should know that it's an option for you to choose. So a lot of that will be coming out is kind of user experience differences, some more expanded tools like for the template designer. We've chosen a new one that has very similar layout, very similar everything. All of the options will be there, but we hope, again, it'll be like a better experience. So know anyways that help is here, and help will be updated. And I think that's where I was ultimately going with, is like, help is constantly updated, but it will be really updated with this upcoming version as well. So stay up there on our webinars page, which I will forward with the slideshow presentation so that you can see that. And then in a little bit more consolidated, you can also access all of the other webinars. Okay, so if you don't have any other questions, and then maybe I'll open it up to the floor one more time, because there were a lot and I really appreciate your questions. If anybody has anything.
Stephanie, this is Heather from Madison.
Hey.
Hey, just a quick question for other agencies that are using the client checklist. We have just started using it over the past about 6 months for a home study checklist. And I was wondering if other agencies are saving the documents that are uploaded in another source, like SharePoint or something else. And if so, is there an easy way to get them out of SAM and to be saved in something else?
Is anyone else doing that right now? Like, I think David, if David's still on, they're not actually uploading very many documents into SAM. Has anybody else had experience actually having a secondary copy of the documents that are in SAM and putting them somewhere else? Look and see if anybody's wants to be writing.
Well, maybe this is something that can be discussed when you have another call about the checklist.
For sure, yeah. And I can actually put out a feeler too for you, Heather, to see, because not sure that people are. I mean, I'm hearing at this point that paper is kind of being eliminated. That's what seems to be the trend, is like the actual paper files are going away. I will put in a feeler to a couple of agencies and ask them specifically, and maybe actually send out a survey. We're always really interested in kind of what people are doing, so that's helpful. To answer your question though, Heather, right now there's not a, excuse me, over where do I want to go? Any of the documents that are uploaded through here, right? When they go to the client's, yep, I want to leave there. The client's checklist or their documents section, there's not really a way to like export all right now, or zip all documents up, or even zip up a subset. But we have that as a story and something that we would find, I'm sure everybody would find very helpful, because there's oftentimes you can email documents, but you're kind of poking them under the documents section, right? You can email documents. Even this, why is this under advanced options? It will come out when I have my way with this site, but when you can come here and you can email them all, right? So that's one way of getting them out of the system, but it's not exactly what you're saying as an easier way to transfer them. So let me do a couple of things. I'll put out the feelers. I'll make sure for sure that we have a story for our development team for that and kind of advocate for it. And I will also find out if there is any potential with the new version of the site as far as that being an integration, right, with SharePoint. I do think it's because it's Microsoft SharePoint that a lot of agencies are using Microsoft Office 365 and other things, but to have a secondary backup for documentation. And how could that look? So what I won't know exactly is like, in SharePoint, does everyone have a different filing structure? And if so, like, how do you then manage that with any logic, right? And like what needs to be available, or if there's some kind of setting, you know, that makes it a bit more clear. Does that make sense? Like, if it's a free-for-all for how to set it up, then it's a little bit, there's not a direct path for us, if that makes sense. But let me see. I will write you back a couple of things.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other outstanding ones? Ones being questions. And so if not, remember, you know how to connect with us through support at inreachsolutions.com. You can reach us. And email's by far the best way, because we're always on these computers. So that is definitely the best way to connect with us. Thank you so much for all that you do. I did not get out an email in November. You guys are probably also swamped with all of the Adoption Day proceedings and programs that you're throwing on. But we do want to thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of the service and the work that you do. Thank you very much for that. Thank you all for joining the call. It means a lot to me that so many people are interested in learning this topic, which I will then, you know, continue to push out information to support you in that way. And if you have any feedback for that, always let me know. We really kind of go through your questions and make sure that we're covering them and help. To be able to point you, and so you can be self-serving for yourself and not wait on us. And then happy holidays, right? Whatever it is that you celebrate, it is sort of the United States time of year for that. So enjoy the end of the year. Happy New Year. I look forward to getting out the webinars and the new things that are kind of up and coming for SAM in 2020. That's super exciting for our team, and I think it will be for you guys as well. So I'm looking forward really to having some discussions on what's going to work best for you in the coming months, and hopefully see you guys next year. So I think you could only see my picture before. Let me see if I can do this quick. Hi. Thank you so much for coming, and have a wonderful end of your year, and we'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.